For the last few years, I've had this sense that everything I learned as a kid about how America's government works is completely wrong. But I had no idea how bad things actually were until I saw this one graph. Researchers at Princeton University looked at more than 20 years worth of data to answer a pretty simple question. Does the government represent the people? Now, this is what they found. This axis here represents public support for any given idea. On the left, at 0%, are ideas that not a single American wants. On the right, at 100%, are ideas that everyone supports. This axis represents the likelihood of Congress passing a law that reflects any of these ideas, from a 0 to a 100% chance. On this graph, an ideal republic would look like this. If 50% of the public supports an idea, there's a 50% chance of it becoming law. If 80% of us support something, there's an 80% chance. You get the idea. Now, most Americans would probably agree that, with a few exceptions, we should be as close to this ideal as possible. Unfortunately, the way America actually works doesn't even come close. Take an idea that nobody supports, literally nobody, and it has about a 30% chance of becoming federal law. Now, take an incredibly popular idea, the most popular idea this country has ever seen, and there's also about a 30% chance of it becoming law. This means that the number of American voters for or against any idea has no impact on the likelihood that Congress will make it law. Put another way, and I'm just going to quote the Princeton study directly here, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. So if you've ever felt like your opinion doesn't matter and that the government doesn't really care what you think, well, you're right. But there's a catch. This flat line only accounts for the bottom 90% of income earners in America. Economic elites, business interests, people who can afford lobbyists, they get their own line. Look at how much closer their line is to the ideal. When they want something, the government is much more likely to do it. And when they don't, they have the power to completely block it from happening, no matter how much the rest of the country supports it. They get what they want, and guess who ends up paying for it? We pay for it with the most expensive healthcare in the world. We pay for it with a tax code that's a complete mess. We pay for it with internet that's slower and more expensive, with wasteful spending, a floundering education system, a catastrophic drug war, and 1 in 5 American children born into poverty. Almost every major issue we face as a nation can be traced back to this graph. How does this happen? Well, just follow the money. Right now, it's perfectly legal to buy political influence in America. Here's how it works. Let's say a big bank wants a law that would force taxpayers to bail them out again if they repeat the exact same reckless behavior that crashed the global economy in 2008. Not exactly the most popular idea with the public, and Congress knows that. That should be the end of it. But that's where the money comes in. It's perfectly legal for our bank to hire a team of lobbyists whose entire job is to make sure that the government gives the bank what it wants. Then, those lobbyists can track down members of Congress who regulate banks and help raise a ton of money for their re-election campaigns. It's perfectly legal for those lobbyists to offer those same politicians million-dollar jobs at their lobbying firm. Then, those lobbyists can literally write the language of this new bailout law themselves and hand it off to the politician they just buttered up with campaign money and lucrative job offers. And it's perfectly legal for those politicians to take the lobbyist-written language and sneak it through Congress at the last second. So now you've got a law that greatly benefits the banks, and the whole process can start over. This is how a bill becomes a law. A special interest hires some lobbyists, those lobbyists collect campaign contributions, offer jobs, and then write the laws that Congress then passes to help those same special interests. This happens every day on every single issue with politicians of both parties. In the last 5 years alone, the 200 most politically active companies in the United States spent $5.8 billion influencing your government. Those same companies got $4.4 trillion in taxpayer support. And that's trillion, with a T. And that's just the top 200 companies. Never mind every other special interest, every union, every trade association, and every billionaire. Every single one of them can use their money to buy political influence. You know, there's this idea out there that this only became a problem after the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision in 2010. But the data goes back almost 40 years, and the results are clear. Corruption is legal in America. And as long as it is, anyone who can spend money to buy political influence will. The solution here isn't rocket science. Make corruption illegal. We already know Congress won't do it. I mean, one look at this chart will tell you that. What we need is a plan that lets us go around Congress and do what the American people do best. Fix this mess ourselves. Well, good news. We have that plan and it's already working. Now that we've got the problem covered, let us show you how to be part of the solution.
The US Congress and presidential elections. Voting. The people's chance to decide who they want to run their country and represent their interests. But how does it work in the United States of America? Across the pond, voting is quite different. Like the UK Parliament, the United States Congress has two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Unlike the UK, there are public elections for both houses, and a third separate election is held to choose a president. In the US, the president is both the head of state and the head of government. In the UK, these roles are carried out separately by the monarch and the Prime Minister. The House of Representatives in the US Congress is designed to give a voice to the people of every local voting region of America. Members of the House of Representatives stand for re-election every 2 years. Each state is split into districts, and each district votes for one representative. The number of districts depends on the population of each state. For example, California, the most populous state, is split into 53 districts, so has 53 representatives. But Alaska, which is huge but has a really small population, only has one district and therefore only one representative in the House. Like the UK House of Commons, the election system is first past the post, so the candidate with the most votes in each district wins a seat in the House of Representatives. The party that wins a majority of seats in the House takes control. The ideal situation for a president is that the House is controlled by their own party. However, with elections held every 2 years, there's always a midterm election in the middle of a president's time in office. If the public thinks that the president's not doing a great job, they can vote in more members of the opposition party, making it more difficult for the president to pass laws. The Senate in the US Congress, like the House of Lords in the UK Parliament, is sometimes called the upper house. George Washington described the Senate as the saucer that cools the coffee, meaning that it's their job to scrutinise and question all proposals made by both the House of Representatives and the President, before voting to decide whether they should proceed as law. Senators, like members of the House of Representatives, are also elected to their seats by the public. Senators serve 6-year terms, and elections are staggered, so every 2 years, a third of the senators run for re-election. Each state is represented by 2 senators, regardless of its population. And again, the first past the post voting system is used, so the candidate with the most votes wins. So how do Americans choose their leader? Well, presidential elections take place every 4 years. The 2 main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, host big get-togethers where they choose their presidential candidate, the person they think will be the best leader for the nation. The winning candidate then chooses their vice presidential candidate, also known as their running mate, to help support the campaign. Presidential candidates usually choose someone with different areas of skill or knowledge, so they present voters with the best package. Together, they're known as a ticket. Presidential candidates from both parties then start out on massive election campaigns to gain as much voter support as possible. They travel across the country and hold great big campaign rallies where they set out their policies and their ideas for the whole country. These campaigns cost money, lots of it, so both candidates have large campaign teams who help raise the tens of millions of dollars needed to keep them afloat. When it comes to election day, the public go to the polls to vote for one presidential ticket. So far, so easy. However, the public don't vote directly for their choice of president. Instead, a system called the Electoral College is used. Each state is allocated a number of electors that will make the final choice. A state has the same number of electors as it does senators and representatives. In most states, all the electors will vote for the presidential ticket which received the most support in the public vote. Finally, the presidential ticket with the most electoral college votes becomes President and Vice President of the United States of America. So that's how things work in the US. A democracy like the UK, but on a much larger scale.